Now we have a total departure from the geometrics and something that Claris Cliff started working on, the Delicia group.
Yes, and it's most interesting. The Delicia wares come from the the Delicia wares start in 1929 and go into the early 1930s. Unlike the other more structured designs that Claris uses, she started with the idea of dripware. Now we may be more familiar with drip paintings, for example, of the 1960s, very much a part of what we would say is being very familiar with modern art. But again, to shift design to the idea of dripping paint down the side of something by mixing some turpentine in with it and thinning it out and letting it run down the sides, again in these bright colors, was very new. And you can see a marvelous example of that in this wonderful ruffled edged bowl with its bright orange edges and yellow at the bottom and then blues and purples dripping down the sides, all through the inside as well as the outside. That's Delicia at its most pure. But she also, again going back to the popularity of flowers, no one can ever seem to get beyond flowers or beyond loving flowers in pottery. She has this wonderful piece here with the pansies on the outside, and again you can see the dripware that occurs below it, and in the case of this particular vase, there's drip on the inside as well. So she's combining more traditional motifs with this very contemporary drip, and putting the two of those together again is part of the marvel of Claris Cliff. There are so many different shapes that Claris developed, hundreds of shapes and hundreds of designs with all of her paintresses, and our having 175 objects in this exhibition and trying to find a way to group them so that they would be particularly interesting to our public. And this particular group is about some of her marvelous shapes. And the one we show here, this great green and red piece, which again shows her wonderful use of, and very distinctive use of landscape motifs, both inside and out. But this is called the Floppy Hat. And it really does give you that sense. Claris took from the world around her in many ways, not only from works of art, but also from real things in everyday life that would be familiar to others, that would have a kind of jolly and playful quality to them, especially in the Depression. One needed not only bright color, but something rather playful. And this is a particularly good example of that. Another group I wanted to share with you is a group called conicals, derived from the cone shape. This is a very Art Deco, streamlined shape again, and it's one of Claris's most famous. So everything you see in this area developed from the cone, starting from the bowl shapes here, set on as inverted cones, set on little feet, to, in the front, something called sugar sifters, not something we use in this country. We've had to learn a little bit about setting tables in Britain and how you would use them. I think we all would like to use sugar sifters now rather than sugar bowls. But you can see that the simple form allowed for quite diverse handling of the color and of the designs.
And now we're back with some unique kind of landscapes.
Yes. This again is a group of traditional wares as well as modern, Claris's modern pieces. For example, this little pot in the front is a traditional piece. This was something that she would have started with when she first started painting the wares. Whereas in the upper left you see a stepped piece with kind of a pinkish with a very unusual tree in it. That stepped form, again, a very contemporary streamlined form that's actually a candlestick. That is a Claris Cliff original form. So you see the difference between the two you also see that the shapes have something to do with the way the decorations are placed on them. The nice little Athens jug here in the front can take quite a full landscape with a cottage and trees, this wonderful little house. Oftentimes there's a little bit of smoke curling up out of the house, whereas, for example, the stepped candlestick is best simplified with just one tree, but even that tree is very stylized and brightly colored and in kind of fantastical colors, which is again very much part of Claris. This is a whole group of landscape images, and the main thing to note here is that the people from Great Britain and the British Empire, as with Americans thinking, I guess, of people in the British Empire, the idea of a sweet cottage, maybe a thatched roof cottage, picturesque, is very much our image of Britain. And likewise with the people themselves. And one of the most popular motifs that she came back to over and over again, both in more traditional kinds of designs as well as more modern designs, is the cottage. And you see it here. You see a much more elaborate one with this orange with these little black bulbs that are really little tree shapes. This one over here with this kind of flying, it reminds me of our tornado over Kansas upside down. I mean, it looks like it's blowing in the wind, and again, the bright colors that we don't necessarily associate with trees. But again, it has that simple, wonderful house, and notice that the curling smoke is a little bit of blue over in the right-hand corner that in this case is turned down because it's also captured by the wind. Claris allowed the shapes and allowed her paintresses to make the motifs suit the pieces. And that may mean turning something right side up or upside down. This is a group called the Inspiration Range, and notice how completely different they are from anything else that we've looked at. Even the Delicia, which was the dripware. This ware has a matte finish. That means it's not a shiny, glossy finish. It's a dull finish. And notice these beautiful colors, turquoises and deep cobalt blues and purples and browns. This ware was made to imitate to some extent art pottery, which would be a very high-end pottery. It was very expensive to make, it was hard to fire, and it didn't last for very long, but again, it shows Claris's very experimental nature. In fact, the advertising for this talked about its rich colors and its matte glaze and compared the coloration to ancient Egyptian pottery, which gave it again a kind of cachet that was very interesting and kind of provocative and evocative of the time period, but also that gave it much more character. And it is very, very beautiful and a little bit harder to come by. But you see, again, some of the traditional shapes and these stepped pieces and so on that she worked with to bring out the best of the designs.
We're finishing up our visit today at the Muskegon Museum of Art. And Jane, we were talking about the fact that you do have wheelchairs available here for patrons that may have difficulty.
Yes, we have wheelchairs, we have elevator access, and through our parking lot entrance, you can come right in easily with no problem at all, no stair steps of any kind, and we're happy to assist anyone who needs it. And by coming in through the gift shop as well, it's always a good place to start in the gift shop.
And Thursdays are your Meyer free days still, and the museum's
Yes.
open until late in the evening on Thursday?
That is correct, till 8
And you're
p.m.
open Wednesday through Sunday, I believe.
Correct. We'd love to have you come down to the Muskegon Museum of Art anytime until August 1st for Color It Bazaar, Claris Cliff pottery from a Michigan collection. You can see 175 of the most fabulous objects very rare in the United States, from one of the finest collection in our very own state of Michigan. We look forward to seeing you.
And this is Debra Brown-Hendrickson for Simply Muskegon. I want to thank Jane Connell, our guest today, for taking us through this whole museum full of wonderful objects.
I appreciate the opportunity and enjoyed it very much.